Hello, welcome to a live stream of Web Developers Working Week. I think this is the ninth episode that I've done. I'm doing it live because there is no foam tiles on this wall. My editing iMac has actually been boxed and is ready to be moved to the new premises. And I am incredibly busy. So I thought I would just do a quick live stream. And I don't really want to be in a position where I'm skipping videos and stuff. It has been an incredibly stressful time because of this move. Um, they say that moving is one of the most stressful things that you can do, and I have to agree with that. Um, when I first started this whole process of moving, I thought, oh no, it'll be fine. But actually, it has been quite challenging. So anyway, I won't go on about that. Web Developers Working Week, if you don't know, is all about me talking about what I get up to as a freelance developer on a weekly basis. And so last night, I did a talk at PHP South West, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. But that was really cool, really fun. But this week, coding wise, there's been all sorts of stuff that I've been doing for various clients. One client in particular, uh, a long-standing client, big client that I've got, they or some of the team have actually gone on holiday, um, which means, or at least the people that I report to have gone on holiday, and that's kind of given me a bit of headroom in the sense that I can get on with stuff without being um, sort of no disrespect, but asked things or sort of like um, it's just given me the ability to focus. Not that I couldn't focus beforehand, but it just gives you the opportunity to actually, say, right, you've got this period of time now where you can actually do some very productive pieces of work, and do all of the kind of the maintenance, the back-endy type stuff. So I've been doing a lot of APIs. So in the last few days, I've probably built something like 10 or 15 API endpoints plus the front end. So it's sort of taking that response and request all the way through from start to end, and um, that's been really good. And we're using Symfony for that. Um, I've been able to sort of condense down the API calls, or the responses at least, and actually start making things function a little bit better. This is all in prep for attacking this thing with Siege. If you don't know, Siege is a great way of testing load and stuff. So next week I'll be talking probably a little bit about that when all of these APIs are in place. Because really, what I want to do is test out the strength of the database to actually see how resistant the database is to load, and get to a point where I can actually make it fall down and then see the pinch points where I want to put the caching sort of levels and layers and stuff, whether it uses Varnish or whether it uses Memcache or whether it uses other types of cache. I think like ETAG caches for things like assets and stuff. Caching's great, but it's one of those things that you shouldn't just set it and forget it. Caching is actually quite costly from a client's point of view, because you have to have things that cache, right, and you then have to maintain those things. So you should really only be caching the things that you need to cache. I did a video a long time ago about saying that caching is not the silver bullet of performance, because you get stale cache. So you shouldn't just be throwing cache all over the place, um, because you can trip yourself up like that. So that's kind of where I want this to go in the next sort of few days, week or so. But it's been really good because I've actually been extremely productive in the last few days, because I have a things to do list which I can just sort of like chop down. Um, and obviously, when the client before they went on holiday. They gave like almost like a shopping list of things, and I've been able to sort of tackle those, which has been really good. This is my lunch break, so I will be shooting off really soon. I'm going to probably bleed this out to about 20 minutes maybe, but I'm also really hungry, right? So I need to get some food myself. Um, and another client that I've got, they, so it's an old client, right? And they've recently just changed their hosting provider, and that's just caused a whole bunch of issues because the things that you just assume work don't work. So that's been fun, mostly around permissions, and locations of things because the things have the actual box, the operating system has changed. So that's been tricky, but that's just it, isn't it? You the unexpected happens, and you have to just roll with it and cope with it. The talk I did last night, and I will be doing a whole video on the talk, was about software complexities, and the talk was about 30. I recorded it at 32 minutes. It should have been longer, um, and I made some real utter mistakes just preparing that. So one, for example, is I put a timer down, and then I sort of moved away, so I couldn't. It wasn't actually in eye shot. But what I'm going to do is, because my head is still buzzing because of that talk, I want to condense all of those thoughts down, and then I'll probably do a what I've learned from the speaking gigs that I've had, and I've only had a few. I've only had a couple. Well, I think this was my third. And this one was the far longer one. It was all about software complexities and how complicated software is. If you follow me on Twitter, and certainly on Instagram, I've been dropping some slides from that talk as well. So do check me out on that if you haven't done so already. But I suppose if I could title this week, it's been sort of stress and sort of relief in a kind of a two end spectrum type thing, because we are in this house, and this house is all packed up and ready to go, and yet we've got a week or so in order to before we move. That is actually quite depressing in the sense that you are in living around boxes and stuff. We've properly downsized. Even the desk that I'm on here, this is going, and that will be going fairly soon, because what I would like to do in the new place is have a standing desk, because I think that as programmers, we are sitting down far too much, and I would like to at least have the option to stand. And I know that lots of people go, oh, standing desks, it's a fad, but actually, I personally think that standing is far better than sitting down. And I'm one of these people who crouch over the keyboard like a Tyrannosaurus Rex trying to tap at code. And I lean forward and forward and forward and forward and forward. Before I know it, I'm really close to the screen. It's not that I'm short-sighted, it's just because I'm lazy in my posture. So I think that standing up would probably be more comfortable for me, and it also means that I'm moving around because you're changing the weight and stuff, which I think is such a good health benefit. Um, but yeah, this move has been challenging because we are in a chain, and the chain has grown uh, due to very sort of reasons that are beyond our control. Um, and yeah, it has been fairly stressful, and even the things like deliveries of stuff, when they don't come in, you're like, what address do I have to give you now, and all of this stuff. So there's, from a business point of view, it is an extra level of stress, because obviously you're sending invoices out and stuff, and you're receiving invoices, so you have to tell your clients that you are changing address, so you've got a whole lot of admin to go. And of course I was ready to do that a few weeks ago, and then the whole move got pushed. So it has been quite weird. And of course you have the financial side, the legal side, and all of this stuff, um, buying the furniture and stuff. So it has been really kind of intense, in the sense that there is so many things that you have to do in order to actually just move objects from one place to another. The process is actually quite long. And it's part of the talk, part of the thing I was talking about in my talk. It was the fact that software is both invisible and non-visible, in the sense that a house is something that you can actually visualize, you can walk through, you can measure, you can do all kind of things to this house. Whereas with software, you can't actually see it, you can't measure it very well. So anyway, that was part of that talk. I'll put links to the talks whenever they're available on YouTube. But I do apologize if my throat is a little bit croaky. It's basically because last night I was talking for so long, and I didn't get in for such a long time because my train was delayed, and I didn't get in until like sort of well gone midnight. Um, so I am extremely tired, even though I'm being really productive with stuff. Um, I am very tired. So tonight is going to be another early night, I think. And then we wake up with all of these boxes around, which is great. Um, Other things that I've been doing coding wise, we've been focusing on lots of JavaScript. JavaScript in some of the projects that I've been doing hasn't been frameworks, they haven't been libraries, they have just been raw JavaScript, which has been really nice. And it's funny how much of the JavaScript that I have to kind of relearn, because when doing things in, say, jQuery, or doing things in I don't know, not necessarily React but other frameworks, you kind of lose touch from the actual language. And I mentioned this in one of my IGTV episodes this week about the material and the tools, and the fact that there is a separation. Programming language, in my opinion, is the material, the raw material, whereas the tool is the framework or the library that you're using to manipulate and mold that raw material. But you can be so kind of like involved in the tooling that you forget about the raw material, and you forget that actually the raw material is something that you can use. Um, you can actually use in a way that the tooling doesn't necessarily need to be the thing that you have to focus on. There's a lot of things in JavaScript that you can do, especially now in 2018, that you certainly couldn't have done a long time ago. But it's things that you can do in JavaScript that you wouldn't necessarily think that you could do, and you wouldn't have that opinion, and you would have that opinion because you've been focusing too much on the tooling. Um, so yes, there's widgets out there that I could load for things like discovering selectors and stuff on jQuery on JavaScript, but you can actually use JavaScript itself in its raw form to do a lot of stuff. And my opinion is that if I can write code using the raw materials, without the tooling, without frameworks, without libraries, in less code than those frameworks and those libraries take up, and I'm still actually providing the same end result, then that to me is better for the system, because you're making the system smaller and you're not actually forcing the application to use those tooling. Because you have to remember, when you're developing software that is going to last a very, very long time. In fact, another part of the talk that I did last night, I mentioned that in my opinion, software is grown and not built. You grow it, you maintain it, you look after it over time, it evolves. You build an ecosystem around the software. And you have to, whenever you decide upon a framework, whenever you decide upon a library, you are essentially investing in that. You are stuck with that until comes a time that you refactor and you take that out. But taking it out when you are highly invested in that sort of ecosystem, in that bubble, is actually quite difficult. For example, if you had if you were a complete Apple fanboy and everything was Apple, your headphones were Apple, you got the earbuds, you got the iPhone, you got the iWatch, you got the Macs, everything in that was a nice comfortable bubble for you. If you took one of those products away, then you would find that incredibly difficult, even if the other product actually did something better. So, for example, the earbuds or whatever they're called, they will only work with the proprietary stuff. And so you are locking yourself into that kind of thing. And yes, I know that you can change frameworks and you can change libraries quite fast and rapidly, but you also have to change the code that you are using to adapt to that as well. So you have to think that there is a level of maintenance involved in actually doing this. Go back to the talk that I made last night, all about software complexities. There are so many complexities that we put onto the system ourselves in an accidental kind of way because we've made decisions based on perhaps the essential complexities, the requirements, and the features that are fine today but aren't necessarily great later on in the future. And typically, you aren't the one who's going to be maintaining the code later on because you're probably going to be working on another feature or another project. So you're going to be setting foundations up for other developers for other features and so forth. And so there is a large overhead, and lots of things have happened in JavaScript recently. Lots of changes have moved. Lots of things like the task runners they've improved and evolved. And the projects that I've worked on this year, there are I mean, I can remember one that we had to remove Bower.js because we knew that Bower.js is not going to be supported heavily later on. And so we took the critical decision to remove it now because we didn't want that pain later on in the future, because we didn't want to be heavily invested in that thing. And this is the whole point. It's an evolving, growing process. In my opinion, software is grown, not built. Um, when you build something on a conveyor belt, you're building one thing, and then you're building another thing, and you're building another thing. But you never really go back to the thing that you originally built and improve it or change it or grow it. Software is constantly changing. Another point from the talk last night. Software is constantly changing, and we as developers have to adapt to that. But anyway, so I'm extremely tired, very hungry, and I think I'm gonna shoot off and grab some lunch before I carry on with some more work. But I do apologise about the sound. It sounds like an echo chamber in here. My throat is extremely croaky, but I thought I would just jump on and give you a live stream of Web Developers Working Week and just to discuss some things that I've been getting up to. And we'll probably do a similar thing next week as well, because we're going to still be in this state of flux, not really knowing whether we're coming or going. But thanks ever so much for watching, guys. Happy coding, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.